Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. Representation. The importance of being able to see mirrors of ourselves out in the world has come to seem obvious. That we can't be what we can't see. Women astronauts paving the way for little girls to become scientists and explorers. A Black president literally changing the face of what leadership can look like for a new generation of leaders. Queer writers and performers expanding what loving and being loved looks like, both for the world and also for a community that has too often been forgotten in pop culture. In all of these ways, representation is often focused on the importance of being seen and being reflected back and the immense value in that act alone. But this week's guest had me thinking so much about how representation, especially in pop culture, is also an opportunity for people to learn about themselves, to question what they know, to find community that they didn't even know belonged to them. In that way, representation does more than affirm or validate. It allows people to seek out a fuller expression of themselves, who they fundamentally are. And isn't that incredible? This week's guest, Kat Wood, is a multi-hyphenate. She's a public speaker and a communications expert. She was early into some of today's most recognizable tech giants, like Amazon and eBay, and has, from her days growing up in working-class Yorkshire to her time walking the storied halls of Oxford University and beyond, become an expert in all things people. Not because social interaction has always come easy to her, but rather the opposite. She often found herself trying to make sense of all of the ways that people communicate without saying exactly what they mean. An eye roll, a shrug, a euphemism. But it wasn't until much into adulthood that she started seeing people with autism shown on the screen and in literature. It was only then that she started to realize that all this data that she had been collecting for all those years on how people interact, it was for a very good reason. Her brain was working in a totally different way, and now she understood there was a name for it, for her. If it hadn't been for authentic stories of how people navigate their lives with autism in a world designed for neurotypical people, whatever that means, Kat may never fully have had the vocabulary to name and claim the fullest extent of her identity, which indeed has become her greatest superpower. Her experience with the power of representation has been so profound that she is now playing her own part to expand that representation even further for others, specifically in the workplace. We have Love on the Spectrum showing us how neurodivergent people can navigate the complicated world of romantic entanglement. We have shows like Born Naughty digging into how kids perceived as naughty are potentially navigating undiagnosed autism. But still, there's a cultural black hole in the space where most adults spend most of their time, the workplace. Kat's hoping to change that. This was a really special episode for me, both because I feel like I got to know a friend I've had for a long time on a much deeper level, and also because I genuinely learned so many new things, both in terms of how I might approach parenting my own kids, regardless of where they may be on the spectrum, and how I might better look after myself. Enjoy. Kat, you ready? Welcome to the closet.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, so we're going to start with young Kat. We're going to get to today. We're going to cover everything in between. I'm so excited about this conversation for a number of reasons. Your professional track, I feel like on some of the things that you've done professionally, you've been ahead of the curve on. And then on the personal side, being diagnosed later in life as being on the spectrum, raising a kid on the spectrum, navigating all of that in a professional context. There's so much to talk about, and I got some listener questions. I think what's really special about having you on, we've had other guests, I think I mentioned to you, that have raised kids on the spectrum, but they identify as neurotypical. And I think it just is a totally different experience when you can understand your kid in a different way. So we got to dive into all of it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So tell me, what was growing up like? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the north of England, in Yorkshire. It was like a small village, a mining town at the time. My dad wasn't a miner; he was a carpenter, and he had his own business. People who identify strongly with being working class, and I get the feeling that has a slightly different meaning in America than in England, but there's a very strong cultural difference. Working class people speak directly. There's no airs and graces. Everyone is very honest and called to be honest about themselves and
Yeah.
about each other.
And then also, Yorkshire, I feel like, has had a little bit of a cultural glow up since probably you were growing up, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's world famous. Yeah.
It's become world famous. And also, just this idea that, like, a Yorkshire accent is like very welcoming and friendly. And, I feel like didn't the BBC start using it for more things? Because it
Have you heard of
just,
All Creatures Great and Small? That's based in Yorkshire.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Lots
mean,
of things. Yeah.
whoever's doing Yorkshire's PR is really
Yeah.
nailing it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're up there with Squirrel PR. Yeah.
You know what? Okay. I mean, whatever. I go on an aside all the time. I have gone down the internet rabbit hole of watching squirrels inside these little, like, squirrel boxes that people set
Have
up.
you seen them cuddling each other?
It's actually
Oh,
more than my little heart can handle, and it's what everybody needs is to watch a squirrel cuddle
yeah.
with another squirrel in a safe space. So, the other thing that I think is interesting about people from Yorkshire is you all seem to find each other in the world. Like when you leave and right? Or is that just my like very small sample size? I feel like this is a thing.
No, it's true, and I can recognize the accent of the village that I grew up in.
You don't have that accent.
No, I don't have that accent anymore. I did. I went to Oxford University, and I think I went there quite determined to keep my accent.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then in the first week, I was reading some funny magazine and burst out laughing. And someone asked me what I was laughing at, and I said, "Ha ha ha! He chucked dog in river." And this whole room full of public school kids was
And for
like,
American
"Oh, he
listeners,
chucked dog in river."
public school kids actually means posh
Yes, it's a
private
different
school.
thing. Yes,
So that's confusing. But public
it
school
is
is
really
like the
confusing.
fancy thing.
Yeah, it's like Eton and well,
Yeah.
Eton really.
It's like Eton. Maybe Westminster in London,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so siblings?
I've got two older brothers and one twin, and we're the youngest. And I know you're quite interested in birth order, so I've been giving this some thought about whether I think we were definitely the babies.
Yeah.
And one brother had a baby each that they called my baby.
They split you guys up, like each of them laid claim to one of you.
Yes, yeah, and I think it was a tactic, right? My mum already had two kids, and then she had twins, and then of course in those days you found out just before you gave birth with an X-ray that you were having twins. Shocking times. Um, and so yeah, she just had to kind of get as much help as she could. So it was right, your baby needs a nappy change, go and get the nappies.
Okay, so genius,
Yeah. Oh,
your baby.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Genius. Also, the like the family that goes for a third and ends up with twins, there's a special kind of hell that must be. I mean, joy ultimately, but like when you are not prepared and you're like, we'll just have one more, just one more.
We'll try for a girl. Yeah. But I've asked about this, and my mum just remembers it being amazing, just having two babies, and like she breastfed both of us probably at the same time. Yeah.
I am just agog. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. My sister has twins and I watched her do it and I still am just like I was so fucked up over having one. I cannot imagine. But you just know what you know, I guess, and you survive
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, people who have twins first say that you just do, you get on with it because it's what you know. But having two kids already, I think they must have been quite chill.
Yeah. I think with each subsequent child, you get more chill. And then at that point, you're just like, well, on we go. So, what was your, like, the family? What was your mom doing? Was she working as well?
No, she didn't work. She either gave up work when she got married or when she got pregnant. She was training to be an accountant. That was just always the plan that she would be a homemaker. Um, so she was always at home. I never went to nursery or preschool or anything like that.
Do you think it was like, some people you're like, oh, they were totally supposed to be a homemaker, stay at home parent? Do you think it suited her?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, she did a good job.
She didn't have like a latent thing fomenting inside her that she had to get outside of the
If she
home.
does, she's kept it secret.
She is British, very good at doing things like that.
Yeah, you never know.
Okay, so now it's funny that you were like, okay, I was thinking about birth order, and my brother and I were definitely youngest. Is there a dynamic at all between the two of you? Who was born first?
Me, oh yeah, there was definitely a power dynamic. I don't know about power dynamic. We got on really well. We always got on really well. But I was the one who was strident and I was dealing with everything, doing all the admin, and he was quieter. And I guess nowadays we would be the pair of twins where the parents would say, we have to split these two up. We have to split them up, or else he's never gonna shine. He's always going to be talked over by his sister. Um, and really, that was, we were in the same class at primary school, elementary school. But then as soon as we got to high school, they split us up, and that was quite a wrench. It looked like I was the one who was fine and independent, but we were really very attached to each other. I mean, we still are, but nowhere near as much as we were.
Now I know, and we've talked about this before, that like you do have feelings on whether or not to split up twins, because the sort of prevailing advice of the day is to split them up, and you're not so sure about that.
I'm not so sure. I think people should always, first and foremost, they should look at their kids and think what is going to work best for these. It's really difficult to sort of phase out that noise from everyone else giving you advice. And it really does seem very common sense to take a kid who's getting kind of like talked over, sort of just dominated, I guess, by his sister, and separate the two. But we were very much a system, and for us, we probably, you get to that point where you realize that you're a person separate from your parents. I reckon that we got to that point much later because we were twins.
Hmm.
And I think that has to be something that's quite delicately handled rather than just thinking, okay, I know what's with the best of intentions, saying, okay, I know what's best for these two kids. Um, I think it's got to be handled delicately.
Yeah.
I'm talking to them as well. Some twins are like, get me away from this person. Like everyone is different. I just
Yeah.
don't like feeling like you have to follow dogma.
Well, and that's been kind of a theme with you in general, which I want to talk about and unpack. Now, growing up, what were like friendships like for you? Easy to come by, tougher to come by?
Um, in primary school, that like some of my first memories are just observing other kids. As I got sort of towards, so primary school lasts until you're 11. Um, and so as I was getting older and sort of 8, 9, 10, I was starting to realize that I was making mistakes with people, and I was trying to, I found schoolwork easy and fun, but everyone else seemed to find friendships easy and fun. And so it was the opposite way round. There was nothing I loved more than going to the library and finding a book about, zebras and doing a little presentation to the class. um, and but it was starting to weigh down on me, and I was starting to realize that I really was standing out from these other kids. And I was starting to internalize it, I think, and thinking, I remember one conversation where I was standing with a group of other kids from my class, And I said something, I don't know what it was, but it was clearly, something that came across very negatively. Um, but yeah, I don't remember what it was, but I remember the response. And it was looks and kind of eye rolls and looking down and maybe some sniggers, but there was not a single word. And I remember being amazed that they were communicating with each other without saying anything. And my first thought was, I'm going to have to work this out. Like, I just placed that firmly on myself. At about 11 years old, I said, I've got to work this out.
There's another language happening here that I don't necessarily understand. And what's so interesting about that example, right, is as you're telling this story, you would imagine somebody said, "Oh, I see these eye rolls and everyone's looking at each other and I felt like shit." But for you, it was more like a scientific observation, an
Yes.
anthropologist sitting outside saying, "Oh, look at these primates as they communicate non-verbally. I must observe them and figure out their ways." That's what it sounds like.
And that's kind of how it was. And then, I went to high school. So high school is 11 to 18. So I was in the same school for all that time. And I remember observing people. I've called it being like Jane Goodall and the chimps, just watching other kids, seeing how they get into and out of conversations. There were kids who were popular. What did they do and say to make friends? Um, and I was bullied a lot for being quite different. But, and of course, that was really hard.
Yeah.
But I do remember this overriding feeling of like, so what's making them
Yeah, you
do
were
that?
able to be a little bit detached from it and
Yes.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
which
think
is a
so.
gift.
Yeah. And then I was reading books about popular science books about genetics and behavior, animal behavior, biology, evolution. I was absolutely fascinated by human evolution, but not just human evolution, but also the little fights that all the evolutionary anthropologists got into with
Yeah.
like, no, my bones are the missing link. No, my bones are the missing link, and just loving these little fights and thinking, well, that's your whole career. Of
Yeah.
course you're not, of course you want your bones to be,
You want better bones.
yeah, my bones are the ones I'm going to be famous forever.
Famous for your bones.
Yeah.
Now, what were, in terms of this context, obviously parents realize that all their kids are different and have sort of different approaches to making friendships and stuff like that. Did your parents ever weigh in on your approach and how you were kind of moving through the world?
No, it was definitely noticed that I was not. I mean, yeah, I once asked my mum about it, and she said, "No, you've never had any friends." There's that Yorkshire bluntness,
Right.
um, and it was absolutely true.
Which
Um,
actually probably served you well, by the way. Like being blunt and straightforward, I imagine,
oh,
is
absolutely, yeah, yeah, it really helps. So these were not the days or the times or the culture in which you would intervene in your kid's life. That like the verb to parent didn't exist. It was just a passive way of describing someone who'd
had
had a
kids.
kid. Yeah. So these were not times when someone might intervene and say, hey, do you want to talk about this? And I had similar problems when I was growing up. And conversations that it's possible to have now, but I probably would have felt quite ashamed if someone said to me, it looks like you're struggling, because I would have felt like a failure.
Rather, you kind of, I mean, some of this is also just like the cat of it all, that you're just like, I'm gonna figure this out myself. I'm gonna make my own system. I mean, you fucking went from Yorkshire working class town to Oxford. Like there is an internal drive, motivation, grit that is just you as a person that comes intrinsically. So I could imagine that that would be potentially pretty disenfranchising if someone identified your superpowers as like a problem.
Yeah, yeah, I would have felt quite ashamed. I mean, even the way that I ended up at Oxford was because of that, because of that drive to work. people out. I wasn't the cleverest kid in the class. If it had been, going to study English or French or whatever, I wouldn't have dreamed of applying to Oxford because I knew I was capable, but I wasn't like, my school was certainly never said, Kat, you're one of the kids that should apply there. I found out about a course called Human Sciences at Oxford when I was 16, 17, and I'd already read the reading list for fun.
Wow.
And I thought, this is it. This is meant to be. This is what I have been working for my whole life. And there was no question that I was going to apply. If I didn't get in, I didn't get in. But I thought, well, I'm going to have a pretty good chance if I can get the grades, because who else could, it'd be quite unusual that someone else had been reading all the books since they were 13.
Yeah.
But I went to tell my head of year at school that I was going to apply to Oxford. And without missing a beat, she said, we can't support your application.
Bitch said what?
Yeah. Yeah. And without missing a beat, I said, I don't need you to support my application. Like, I was surprised that she even felt like it
You
had
were at.
anything to do with her.
Yeah.
Like, what do you rob my dreams? Like,
Nobody asked you.
no, I've just come here to tell you because I thought it would be the right thing to do.
Solicited advice only. That's what
Yeah.
we say on the pod.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, before you get to university, and I'm sure during as well, but like, had you ever heard the term autism? Had you ever heard the term neurodiversity? Are these like, was any of this in your consciousness?
Not with regards to myself or anyone in my family.
But
I'm
you
trying
like,
to think of when I watched films like Rain Man, those things, those cultural moments that really brought autism to the general consciousness.
but you weren't
I
watching Rain Man and being like, oh, that's like me. It's not.
No, definitely not. No, the first time I thought this sounds like me was at university. I read a book called The Curious Case of the Dog in the Nighttime.
I
I
read that
believe
as
that's
well.
the name.
Yes, it is.
Um, and that book is about an autistic boy who solves a crime. But a lot of the kind of interjections into the story are math stuff. And there's, so just really fascinating things that he's working on in his head. And something about that book made me think, this rings a bell.
Hmm.
But it took a very long time. And it was still in my mind actually when I had my first child. And he was such a smiley baby, and he would catch people's eyes in a queue. And when he was like 6 weeks old, he'd catch someone's eye and smile at them. And I remember thinking, it's a terrible thing to say knowing what I know now, but well, at least he's not autistic.
Hmm.
Which, is, I said, just knowing nothing compared to what I know now.
Yeah. To be fair, extremely chill baby. And also the first ever ginger baby I ever held. And then I went on to have a ginger child. So I think it's contagious.
It must be. It must be. Well, do you know what? He's not ginger anymore.
That's actually very sad. And I have a
Yeah.
feeling that's going to happen to mine too. But whatever. I still have pictures of him with his bright red hair being a tiny little baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to Oxford. Is that in any way a disorienting experience for you? Because nothing could be more different than a town in Yorkshire to being in this storied institution that looks like Harry
So
Potter.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved being in a completely different place. It's completely beautiful. Leeds is fine, but it does not have, dreaming spires and buttery sandstone walls. And I was just completely, and I still completely taken in by the romance of the place. That's why I still live close to Oxford. I just fell in love with it.
It is
I didn't
magical.
fall in love with the workload. Carrie, I had to write, what was it, an 8-week term, I had to write 12 essays in 8 weeks, every 8 weeks. And to write each essay, I had to read at least sort of 5 or 6 books and go to lectures as well. So pretty early on, I had to say I can't do the lectures as well. I can't do all of this. I had no idea how other people could do all of that.
And how did you navigate that?
Well, I did what I did, but then I kind of needed to know a little bit more when it came to the exams.
Yeah.
I needed those lectures. So I mean, I passed. I got a second class degree. Um, I used to feel really bad that I got a second class degree, and now I think, but I've got a degree from Oxford. That's
Yeah, and literally nobody will
amazing.
ever ask you again.
No one cares. No one
No.
cares. No
Oh,
one's
you went
ever
to
asked me
Oxford?
to prove it. It could be a lie.
Now, talk to me about friendship in this new context. What was that like making friends when you get to completely reinvent yourself or be yourself in a new place?
That's exactly it. I just reinvented myself, became a completely new person. I don't know whether I was actually a new person, but I there was a reinvention and a new kind of confidence that comes from moving away from everything you know. Because I probably would have found it hard to change within the context of high school
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm still around the same people. They're still going to see me the same way. It's very hard to push through that with your own resilience and say, no, I'm going to, stand up and take your suit off and show your Wonder Woman costume. It's just, no one can do that really. um, but yeah, when I went to college, I just lived this new confident person that I think I had been learning how to be underneath, but I needed a completely new context to bring
To
it out.
practice. And also, there's something about going to an institution like that where when you look around, I'm talking about your peers as well. Like everyone's looking around and everyone knows how hard it was to get there. And so, there's, I think, a mutual appreciation like, oh, we're fucking cool. We're smart. Like, we're all here. And we all like being smart because you can't be in a place like that and engage and succeed if you don't care about your own intellect. You are rewarded for wanting to be smart in those environments. And also, I imagine that there's just more diversity of personalities and ideas because everyone's coming from such different environments, right? It allows for
Yeah.
more heterogeneity among friends.
It does and it doesn't. I mean, it was the whitest place
I didn't say
I had
diversity. I said
I had ever
heterogeneity.
been. It was whiter than a Catholic school in Yorkshire. Um, but it yes, it was an opportunity to meet people who'd had a completely different life. And I think I was quite lucky with my college choice. There are some colleges that are just entirely Eton
Which one were you?
adjacent. I went to Queen's and it was very north of England. Grammar schools, which are generally at the time, I don't think you had to pay for them, but they were the more intelligent children um, who maybe passed exams to get into them. So it was I was really lucky. I had a great cohort. I met people from all over the British Isles and America as well. I got my first American friend. um, yeah, and you're right. We all had this mutual respect. So it wasn't like someone was trying to establish a pecking order and punch down.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah,
for
it was
American
amazing.
listeners,
Before I had kids, it was the best time of my life. I just absolutely loved it.
grammar school for context is similar to like going to a magnet school if you're an American listener. I think that's probably the closest equivalent. Um, yeah, like what a special time. And were you thinking at all during that time, what am I going to do professionally after I get out of this place to make money? Because some of those kids never have to worry about money, but that was obviously not your situation. So, what were you thinking that you would do professionally after?
So, yeah, all of those kids were thinking they'd go to be bankers, lawyers, or accountants. That was it, the big three. And they'd have to do a lot more studying, a lot more exams, and it was a big commitment. And I just couldn't imagine at the age of 21 knowing what job I wanted to do um, firmly enough that I would commit to 3 more years of exams or however long it is. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. But there were a few of us who took a year out, thought about it, and we temped. So it's called. Do you have the equivalent? You just join an agency and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
yeah, agency work. Yeah. And so I was a receptionist at lots of factories. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying at first because I had to answer the phone over and over and over again, and I had to talk to people, and I had to deal with irate people who hadn't been paid for their agency work, and um, it was a real learning experience. Again, I relished it probably because it was an opportunity to come across people that I'd never met before. It was challenging communication. Um, but I did that for a while, and then I ended up in a team of people in a tech company. See, tech was taking off. And so there was so many tech jobs. This is the late 90s. And I ended up in a team of people, um, and we all got on really well. It turns out we've all had neurodivergent kids.
Which
And the ones
means
who
there's a
haven't have
decent chance
diagnosed it.
that a decent chunk of you are neurodivergent, right? That's what they say, like in terms of the hereditary part of it. If you
Yeah,
have a neurodivergent child, there's a likelihood that somebody close to you is also neurodivergent, if not yourself.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So you're all still
Obviously, we
close.
never thought. Sorry?
You're all still close. You and that
Yeah,
group.
yeah, we are pretty close. Yeah, one of them's coming over tonight. So yeah, you could say so.
I think that counts as close.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what was it about the tech world that felt good to you? Because it did seem like that really resonated with you.
Yeah, it was there. It was paying money, but also the web was really becoming a thing. And the web at the time was very much about the written word, but also design, again, about communication. One of my first jobs on the internet was writing help pages for resources for teachers who were using these resources in the classroom, and they were all terrified of this new technology that was going to steal their jobs. Like,
Has
twas
it
ever thus.
yet?
Yeah. And yeah, so that's how I got that sort of passion for communication and for writing and for just helping people to feel safe in situations that could make them feel like they're about to lose their job.
And I mean, there's some empathy that comes with that too, right? Because you can imagine it's not that many leaps or steps to go from I feel like an outsider, I have felt like an outsider. I know how scary it can feel or confusing it can feel. I can help people. I figured out how to walk myself through this. I can figure out how to help other people do that too.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all about putting yourself in the position of the reader. So yeah, I guess I was an autistic empath right from early on.
Which is a superpower. Now, where did Phil enter the picture?
So after uni, I jumped into a relationship that I just. So this was the other thing was I wasn't really focused on a job. I was focused on having kids, and so I jumped into a relationship with someone, um, and we got married when I was 23. And then of course, he was like 23. Of course, he didn't want to have kids,
Child bride,
and
yeah.
yeah, and it was just one of those things that, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
We call it a starter marriage.
A starter marriage. Yes, it was absolutely a starter marriage. And it led to finding my true love because we worked together,
Oh.
uh, all three of us. So the first husband, the second husband. and the first husband's new wife. So we were all working together, and everyone ended up pairing off with the right person. And
Oh, I love that.
yeah, and we got married, and they got married within like 3 days of each other. It was crazy, and no, we didn't know. It was just yeah, one of those things.
Now, what was it about this like big driving force for you to have kids? What was it that made you know this was the thing for you or that you really wanted to do it?
I think it was partly that's what my family did, obviously. My mum didn't work, that was her role in life to have kids and look after kids. And so you kind of look at what your parents are doing and consider that as the norm. But I think there was also a fear there. I think the idea for me of getting married and having kids early on was so that then my future would be locked in. I could sidestep uncertainty and even hard work and getting experience doing things I wasn't very good at and just being in uncomfortable places until I got better at them. And I could just wipe all that away and just be like, yeah, I'm a mom, I've got kids. And
Mm,
it was, knowing what I know now, that
LOL.
yeah.
So, okay, so you and Phil find each other, you get married, and how long until your first one arrives?
Ooh, would it be in about 5 years, I guess?
And was that experience what you thought it was going to be, or did it rock your world?
Having Tommy just was a mix. So first of all, I remember being heavily pregnant and walking around the village, my tiny village with 3 streets, and um, in this great big moo,
Of course.
feeling like I was just the queen of fucking everything. But I had everything I wanted there in my tummy. I was on maternity leave, which you really should try. It's amazing.
America. I mean, I did mine with the first one with the British company, so that was a whole six
Oh,
months.
okay, good,
I
good,
felt
good.
very classy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was on maternity leave, like 3 weeks to go, um, just feeling on top of the world. Um, Bit of a shocker because he was then breech, but diagnosed in when I was already in labour.
Fuck.
So emergency C-section and just all of that, everything I expected. I could have handled a C-section if it hadn't been,
A
well,
surprise.
someone actually didn't spot that your massive baby was breech. But I mean, these things happen. But
He was a big baby.
yeah, he was gigantic. Like what, 4 kilos? You probably don't do kilos, do you?
It was like 9 pounds
Yeah,
ish,
nine
I
or
think.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A big
yeah,
boy.
he was gigantic with his red hair. But anyway, yeah, such a cute little passive baby. Um, I thought I had hit the jackpot. Of course, I'd hit the jackpot. Um, Once we nailed sleep by doing the Gina Ford thing, where do you still have Gina Ford? I think she got like
I don't
booed out of town.
it could have been. I mean, I did sleep training, so some sort
Yeah,
of something like her has come to replace her, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, I guess so. But Gina Ford said block out every little bit of light
Oh,
in the
yes.
room.
Very
Yeah,
popular.
and we did that, and suddenly he went from not sleeping to sleeping absolutely perfectly. Um, I was batch cooking meals. I was just like, I got this down.
You were a domestic goddess
Yeah,
and you were loving it.
yes.
Now, at what point do you feel like at all you're knowing what you know about yourself now and sort of your own way of moving through the world? Do you feel like that has colored your experience of motherhood or early motherhood, being autistic? Like, were you relating to other moms? I feel like there's so much stuff in the beginning about like mom groups and da da da. Were you part of that world? Did you want to be part of that world, or you were just happy doing your own thing?
I did get so previous to that, I'd been much more of a ladsy kind of girl. I mean, I've got 3 brothers, um, and I'm very just plain speaking. I like to most of what I say is just jokes and dicking about. And so I related much better to men than to women. I was probably quite an internalized sexist for a while, just thinking, oh, women talking about feelings. And um, when I had kids, I suddenly it hit me the support that we give each other. You know, all my male friends were obviously nowhere to be seen.
Of course.
Um,
They don't want to talk about your body. Gross.
no, and I just wanted to talk about birth stories. I'm absolutely obsessed with birth stories, and I haven't heard enough recently. Um, but yeah, I started to hang out with the women in the village, and that was the point at which I really started to open up myself, because that whole idea of just joking around all the time, it just keeps you closed, doesn't it? It's a bit of a shield.
So, at what point in your parenting journey do you realize, like, oh, maybe my kid is moving through the world differently than other kids?
So firstly, it was in like very positive stuff. He just seemed so much kinder and friendlier and just kind of cool. I mean, you know, he's my son, so maybe everyone thinks that.
No.
But no. I we noticed that he wasn't sitting up, on because obviously you have you hang up with your group of other mums who've had babies at exactly the same time, and Thomas was still quite floppy. He wasn't sitting up at the same time. It took him, I think, these other kids were like 4 to 6 months, and we were like more like 8 or 9 months before he could hold himself up. Um, he didn't cruise till no, he didn't crawl till he was one. Cruising really late, and didn't walk until he was over two, I think, maybe just around about 2 years old. And we have the health visitor who comes round, and she's just this lovely old lady who just tells you not to worry about things. And she would come round and say, "Don't worry about this, it's all fine." And at that point, I was thinking, so maybe, you know, there's some strange things going on developmentally. He was speaking, but it was like he was building up a a catalogue of words. So he said like cake on his first birthday and bed the next day. And then after that, I forget, but it just seemed like it was one or two words a day, but they weren't then put together. You know how kids, they sort of, you gather a few words and you start to experiment with putting them together, and you make up the past tense, and nothing's quite right, but you're still having a go. And he finally, then around his third birthday, just put all these words together, and he was like, "Hello, mother. What should we do today?" And
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and for you, so it sounds like you were getting some sort of outside advice about his development, but
But it was all very, You'll be fine. You'll be fine." You know, you're just worrying because he's your first kid. But the change came at preschool. So when he was 3, um, the they told us that he was just not really doing anything that everyone else was. You know, like all the little 3-year-olds will come and sit on the carpet for story time, or they'll um, have something to eat at lunchtime. And he was just not like, he was not joining in with any of this stuff, and he wasn't coping well. And so they suggested maybe autism. And then after a while, I mean, everything works just so slowly anyway. I think we maybe thought about diagnosis, but not, no, not until the year after. But he was getting more and more stressed, and he was getting stressed at home. And we were at the point where I would say, you know, "Do you want to go to the playground?" And he'd scream, "No." "Do you want an ice cream?" And he'd scream, "No." And he was just so completely wound up and stressed. Um, and the sort of old fashioned person who was brought up in the 70s and 80s sort of saw this as this kind of naughty
Spoiled,
kid who
obstinate
was
kid,
just,
yeah.
yeah, is just trying to get his own way in everything. Um, and but it was getting stressful because he just seemed so unhappy. And like you're someone's mum and dad, if you can't, help them to feel okay and like give them a hug to help calm them down, you start to feel like, what am I doing wrong? Um, and then another crazy thing happened, that there was a show on TV, and it was called, back in the day when everyone, watched the same TV shows at the same time, back, 14 years ago. There was a show on TV that was called Born Naughty, with a question mark at the end. So it's Born Naughty. And they followed 6 kids who couldn't go to school. They were either school refusers, or they either had an emotionally based kind of adversity to school, or they had been expelled. And it looked at these kids and then gave them an autism assessment, a complete autism assessment, with all occupational therapists, speech and language, psychiatrist, pediatrician, looked at every aspect of these kids and found that most of them were, in fact, autistic. And this was totally eye-opening. But one of these kids refused to do anything, just would not do anything they were told, wouldn't go to school, wouldn't, even do things that you should enjoy as a kid, like getting an ice cream. And the only thing this girl could do was go and see the horses, hang out with the horses. And they said that this was a type of autism called PDA. And it's not something you can change. It's not a behavioral problem. It's a nervous system problem that, but it's part of autism, but not all autistic people are. I don't know what the proportion is, but certainly if you're autistic, you don't necessarily have PDA. It's a nervous system problem, and your fight or flight response is triggered by anyone being above you in the social hierarchy. So the obvious people like teachers, parents. It's very difficult not to be when you're 3 years old, everyone is above you in the hierarchy. So it's an extremely difficult age to have PDA. It said the only thing you can do is, you can't change it. The only thing you can do is have as few demands as possible. And so Phil and I had a chat, and we were at the end of our chain, and we just thought, well, let's give this a go. Let's take away all rules for this kid. So he didn't have to do cleaning his teeth. I would make him a meal, but I wouldn't say, come and eat your dinner. I would just put it down. And he would sort of, obviously you can see it's there. And he would then kind of go up and eat it. Lots of different examples like that. Oh yeah, we didn't say it's bedtime, but we might say, oh, you look a little bit tired. Maybe do you want to go read a story or something? But we had to be really, really careful not to say, it's
Holy
time to,
shit.
or do this. Yeah. And do you know what happened?
Tell me.
He didn't go completely crazy and get a drug habit. He calmed down. He calmed down over the course of 3 weeks and just turned back into our lovely, lovely little boy.
Holy shit. Was it? I mean, that is so contrary to everything that you expect to do as a parent. How hard was that for you guys to make that transition?
It was hard, and it wasn't hard. He was in such a state that,
You were desperate for a change.
yeah, we would have done anything. But it is hard. It's hard to do it all the time. It's hard not to get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean, you're totally putting somebody else in the driver's seat. And in some respects for your own life too.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And how does that look in a school setting?
It doesn't, unfortunately. Shortly after that, he went to, so that was at a preschool just for the little nursery kids, kindergarten, I guess. Then he went to primary school, um, and they really tried. They even got him a little assistant, with no additional funding because you have to go through all kinds of assessments and everything to get the official funding. Um, but they were really kind, and they wanted the absolute best for him, because the thing with him is that you can see what he's charismatic as well. Like, people like him even when he was sort of maybe doing things that look like he was just trying to manipulate other people, kind of negative behaviors. um it's easy to assume that someone's got a choice over that, but when you reframe it as it's fear, it's just like a frightened animal. Scared horse will buck and kick, and um but it's not really possible to give someone autonomy in a school.
No. So
Yeah.
what does his education look like?
Well, after a while, he went to a specialist school that sold itself on being understanding his particular needs and giving him a completely personalized education. It didn't work out that way. It turned out that they were still very boundaries driven. Now, the thing is, uh, boundaries are a hot topic, aren't they, for parents? And yes, the school would argue like all kids need boundaries, but if you're in a state of nervous system turmoil and someone's saying stop crying and rolling around on the floor, you know, and get back in the classroom, for example, it's completely inappropriate. Someone described it as trying to teach someone to knit when they're on a battlefield.
I like that.
It's not a teachable moment. And that person, really, what they need is safety. They need to do whatever they need to regulate.
Have there been any situations since you've sort of adopted this approach, which is now I mean, how old is he now?
14.
Yeah, so have there been you're a pro at this point. I mean, have there been any situations where being hands off have made you feel like from a safety perspective or anything where you've been like, "Oh God, there's another side to this that feels really scary for you as a parent."
Not at all. Not once. Not once.
And I think that is the difference between in a just from as an observer between a child who truly has PDA and a child who's
Exactly. This
acting
is not
out.
something I would
Right. This
recommend
is but
to
but
anyone
but I
else.
that's kind of the litmus test, right? Is like the fact that when those barriers are taken away from him, he's able to look around the world, know right from wrong, and act accordingly.
So you see, autistic children, neurodivergent children in general, they hear more directions than, many times more directions than other kids. People are always telling them to quieten down, sit down. This is not about not knowing. It's not about not knowing you shouldn't hit someone. It's about the absolute terror of having someone who is frightening you right in your face and just needing to get away from that.
Yeah.
And so when you take away the demands and the the constant amygdala flaring up, then you leave that kid free to just do all the things they've always wanted to be able to do.
Now, for you, where in your story do you get a diagnosis?
This would have been when he was about 3. So the stress of that situation revealed my kind of real inability to cope when things get really unexpected. And And it just started to, I read about autism more and more, and it just became really obvious. And then I read about women finding it hard to get a diagnosis, going to see their GP, and the GP saying, "No, but you've got a job," and you look me in the eye. I went to see my GP and said, my son's autistic and I've been looking into autism, and she just said, "I'll put you forward for a diagnosis." Like immediately. So ultimately that turned out to be pretty straightforward. They were having a local drive to diagnose more women at
Wow.
that point. So I got a diagnosis within about 3 months. Now
Wow.
it's more like 3 years.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And how has all of this impacted sort of the way you think about work and sort of your role in a workplace and navigating all of this professionally?
I think about it a lot. I had some jobs that suited me really well. I worked at Amazon quite early on in my career, and it was really everything was very well planned out, and there was one ultimate goal, and then you'd write out your team goals and your individual goals, and everything tracked towards that ultimate goal. And so and was measurable, so you always knew how you were tracking against your goals. Um, and yet at the same time, there was a lot of autonomy. So you could also decide that your job description was your job description. And I wrote content for the non-product pages for Amazon, but I was free to invent new projects that would that as long as I could prove that I was gonna, do make the customer even more happy, then everyone was like, yeah, cool, just do it, just do it. So there's a lot of innovation. It's just a creativity there. I'm not the biggest fan of Amazon now, but the
Sure.
way he set up that business was very neurodivergent.
Well, I
And
was just about to say, dare I
yeah,
say, a lot of tech leaders might also be on the spectrum.
yes, yeah, it just felt like could I could innovate, I could create things and build things, I could show what I could do within a very structured workplace where I knew what success looked like. But then I'd had other jobs I had one job where I just didn't even know what the job was. I was taken on um, mainly based on the fact that I'd worked at Amazon and eBay and been to Oxford. And then I'd go to people and say like, so what what's my job? And they'd be like, what? You don't even know what your job is? Or I'd say, well, is it this? Is it that? And they'd say, no, that's my job. And I was just so confused, and everyone was confused. I've never seen so many people run to the toilets crying in one job. It was daily. It was really poorly managed and quite. I think when there's no real structure, then you leave things open to just the.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
the
that feels like a
question
really good
always.
metric for a healthy workplace. How many times a day is somebody crying in the bathroom?
Yes. Yeah, and this was unhealthy. But you were asking what I was thinking about. Oh yeah. So when I had kids, that was when I became a web designer. So I went freelance. And the reason why, so it was mainly for flexibility, but I also knew that it would be an opportunity to work for a short time with someone for sort of 4 or 5 months, and then I could say goodbye and then move on to the next one. Because I had started to find it difficult to have really long-term relationships with people who weren't friends.
Yeah.
It's like
Interesting.
it gets difficult. Like what does that even mean? How do we kind of maintain an acquaintance relationship? That was just too difficult for me to pattern.
That's a lot of nuance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of thing I would get wrong.
Hmm. And what does getting in that wrong look like? like being overly friendly? Like, what does that look like?
It's a feeling. It's really a
Mm,
feeling. Going back to those kids when I was 11, it's like shrugs and looking sideways and kind of not, and just knowing I've got something wrong here, but I don't know what it is. I have no idea.
that's so interesting. I am really, I get very confused. I don't know where I sit on all of this stuff as a person, but I'm not good at acquaintance. Like, I want everybody to be my friend.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, I just met you and we're doing this interview and then I'll never see you again. And I'm like, but we're friends now. Like we just shared this meaningful experience. We're obviously friends. So I at 40 years
You
old
and me
am
are
trying to
friends
figure.
forever though now, aren't we?
Yeah, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's different. You that does not apply to you. I've held your child. I've been to
You're
your
not trying to
house.
say like that wasn't you just dumping me.
No, but I did like 3 interviews last week with people I've never met before and I was like, obviously we're friends now. Like I don't it's very confused. The acquaintance thing is very confusing for me. I do
It
love a
is, yeah, any kind of nuance. And like I'm getting older now as well, and I'm thinking less about, obviously I love meeting new people. I like new things. I like novelty. Um I love so as I went on, I was developing websites for like 10 years, and I started to niche down to American public speakers and consultants. I don't know why they were American. I don't know how that happened.
we do like to talk
Maybe
about
through
ourselves in public.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe the
Exactly.
British ones would have been
Make
like, oh
it
no, don't
bigger,
put a picture
cat.
of me on my website. Oh, yeah. Yes. I like that. I like just taking someone who had a really nice photo shoot, and I just stick their photos all over a website and tell the world what they stand for, and what they are, how they can change the world.
So that was your gateway drug to realizing this is something that would be good for you.
Yes, yeah. And it was kind of like, you ever get that secret plan where your subconscious is working on something and then you finally spot it and you're like, ah, I see what's happening
Sneaky.
here. I learned so much from those people, so much about, not just about speaking and, doing the job, but also, I learned just professionally, I learned about communication, about parenting, management, leadership. Yeah, I just find it all so fascinating.
Now, okay, wait. Speaking of people who want to hear from you, I do want to remember that we have a couple of questions. I sort of just put them in two buckets because there are things that I think you and I have talked about a little bit offline and things that people want to know from based on your experience. So I want to make sure we get to them. Are you ready? Okay.
I wish you told me them beforehand, though.
There I didn't because you don't need to know them beforehand because this is none of this is complicated. Well, complicated for you because you've thought about it already. I promise. One is, and I think I already know what your answer is. One of our listeners has a child who is on the spectrum and or neurodivergent. I don't know if he has a formal diagnosis of what that specifically looks like, but is very reticent to practice sort of conventional social norms of greeting people or stopping what he's doing to look at people when somebody enters the room. And this parent, who's, I think, really wants their kid to feel comfortable and doesn't want to be pushy about, like, stop and say hi, is caught in this place between people who really don't understand what she's dealing with and what he is like, and are maybe a little judgmental of, like, why aren't you raising your kid to be more respectful. And also she would like it if he could be a little bit more comfortable in social situations. How do you think about that? How have you thought about that? Because I imagine in your experience that really has been a thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you got the two things there. One is the fear of judgment, because what you like in my situation, there were other parents who were affected by my kids' fear and discomfort. And then they would see me not saying, don't do that. We don't, hands are not for hitting. They would see me, take him take him for a walk, or just try and calm him down. Um, and there isn't an I'm afraid there isn't an easy answer to that one, apart from f- frame it. In the end, I had to frame it as, I'm here for him, and other people will judge me, and it's not easy. I still, you know, struggle with being judged by other people. Um, but yeah, ultimately, I just had to say, I know I'm doing the right thing by my kid. Now, then the other thing is, you really want your child to be making friends, and, looking up and just being sociable, and not just because of the judgment, but, for their enrichment, for their, um, just, for their fun and enjoyment. And all I would say to that is, it happens. It happens. But it can't happen unless that person feels safe.
Safe
So
and
when
ready.
yeah, safe and ready. And so anything that you see that anyone else would judge as a behavior problem is data. It's telling you that they're not comfortable. And of course, they have to go around to see their grandma, and they have you can't not you can't take them out of every uncomfortable situation. Um, but it, it it's really hard not to compare them to the other kids. But in my experience, and not just with my kids, but with me and with other autistic people I know, we get there in our own way.
I think so. And I've said
Yeah,
this to
hang in
you.
there. That's what I'd say. It will happen, yeah. And it might be that they're never comfortable in a situation like that, but we all find our tribe. We all find the situations. Like a couple of weekends ago, I went to a wedding. Didn't know anyone else there apart from the bride and groom. I was absolutely terrified. What am I going to say? How am I going to? What if I have to get in the pictures? And I was just, really getting quite anxious on the way there. And then I got there, and my neurodivergent star was just pinging off everywhere. Everyone was just making jokes, talking, clever jokes. um,
And you're like, I'm among my people.
talking about how uncomfortable they were, and I was just like, here we are
Let's
together.
all
This
be
is
uncomfortable
great.
together. I love that. Okay, so then the other sort of group of questions was around, and I imagine you have an opinion about this because you know that every week I'll say like, "Oh, send me a recipe that your family likes," or "What's everyone eating for dinner?" No judgment, every family is different, whatever. And
Triggered.
you're like triggered, not unsubscribe. And there's a whole group of
Yeah,
questions around that exact thing,
yeah.
around how do you navigate sort of the sensory, if that's been a part of your experience, like sensory stuff with food or extreme picky eating related to this specific aspect of somebody's brain. Like, how have you kind of navigated all of that in your house? How do you deal with it?
Yeah. So the reason why I was so triggered was that was my dream. That we'd all eat together, and it'd be like this wonderful Italian family without being Italian. But you know, just everyone there, everyone showing love through food, and that and it was something that I was really serious about before I had kids. We're gonna eat together. We're gonna have meal times, and that's that. And we're all gonna eat the same thing. And if they don't like it, they're gonna eat it. And I got schooled. I got schooled in that, from both kids, and also from my husband, um, who eats when he feels hungry. It's like no one's telling me, we're all as PDA as each other. Like no one's telling him that he's hungry at 6:30 if he's not. Um, so yeah, that's why I was triggered. What I say about that whole situation is, there are other ways to find that joy. There are other things you can do. When we go out to a restaurant, it just so happens that everyone's, one of us We all like novelty. So being somewhere different is great. The noise means no one gets grossed out by the sound of everyone eating. Um, if you go to somewhere with a big enough menu, everyone can find a thing they like, so we don't all have to eat the same thing. But if it's not about food, you can find other joyful group activities that you can do together. You know, maybe a sport thing, or maybe just like hanging out on your phones together on the sofa. You can bond. Um, and the thing about food is it has to be leaned into, I'm afraid. It's
It
a lot of
has to be what?
leaned into a lot of food stuff, picky eating, not wanting to eat with other people, not wanting to eat the same thing. Not A lot of it is about safety. And one of my close family members doesn't want to eat in the same place as everyone else, and so I could just spend the last 10 years saying you will eat at this table and making everybody sad and making my life sad, or I can just respect that. I can respect that need, um, and take dinner up to her, 3 times a day. And it changes as well. I mean, Thomas is so picky. I just didn't think he would. And now we can go to, he likes hot food and Chinese food, and he just likes all kinds of gooey foods and brown foods that I never thought he'd ever want to eat. Things change, and it's really hard when you're in the moment panicking about something like this. I'm not even panicking, just being like, oh, this is not how I wanted this to turn out.
Yeah.
It's really hard to think it will change, because it does change, but it takes acceptance. It takes acceptance of your kid exactly where they are, exactly how they're feeling right now. It takes being able to just move away from the dogma and the dreams and everything you thought it was going to be, and just, yeah, leaning into exactly what it is, and taking joy from just doing the job. Do you know what I mean? Like, just,
Yes. It's very Buddhist, actually.
oh, is it? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Just like the radical acceptance of it all and
Yeah, radical acceptance, definitely. Yeah.
being
If you don't radically
rooted
accept it, you're
here.
just
Yeah.
stuck in this kind of state of, well, I mean, my own nervous system would be completely fraught at all times.
We haven't even talked about your other child.
Yeah. She's PDA too.
I was gonna ask, are they, so was that quicker to diagnose the second time around for you?
Yeah. I mean, we just clocked it right from the beginning. We put her in a school that was freer. That didn't have such a uh, prescriptive curriculum. It didn't have exams. It just you could largely. It's a Montessori school, um, and so we were able to head off some of the problems. Unfortunately, there was an adult there who couldn't accept. This might be unfair, but really just couldn't not be in charge of a
Mm,
child. I mean, that it is quite wild, really, to think of just letting because most of us think if you let a child be completely in charge, then they're going to set the place on fire by
yes,
like
exactly.
5 p.m.
And a neurotypical child, that would potentially be true.
Is that true then? Because I never had a neurotypical child. Is that why you set boundaries? Do they like?
I think so. I mean, I like whatever. I still have little kids, but I'm not super helicoptery. My husband's a little bit more, he's more anxious, so he's wants to be closer to the kids and making sure they're safe, and I give them a much longer leash. But and I do say things like, well, what's your game plan here? If he's going to do something dangerous or she's going to do something dangerous, like, what's the game plan here? How are we going to get out of this? Which is not saying get down from there, don't do that.
No, but it's asking why. What are you trying to achieve by doing this?
Yeah.
And that, I think you can connect very well with the kid.
Yeah.
With PDA, definitely.
But the boundary thing, there are certain things. I mean, it's hard for me to care about a lot of things that, like, like I don't care if my kids sit quietly at the table for 20 minutes to have dinner. But like that is something that's more important to my husband. So there are strategies and tricks and things to get them to do it, to make it fun, that
Mm.
I don't
Joking
think.
around and just, yeah, making things
In games, and like,
silly.
there's the set questions that everybody answers every night and stuff like that, that if you have potentially somebody who's more neurotypical, you can set up a framework where they just come to expect it and they're not resistant to it because they don't have at least that PDA piece. And also, for at least my kid, where he is developmentally at 5, like sometimes he does need to go take a break and take a reset, traditionally time out. But like, I'm just like, you need to go re-rack and come back down here with a different attitude. And I say, go read a book in your room for 15 minutes and then you may come back downstairs. And he does it. Like
And that works. Wow.
it did, but
You have
it,
no idea how you people operate, you
but
see.
it didn't until it did. Like initially
I
it was
see.
like,
Yeah.
the door, but that's how, I don't know if somebody was doing some assessment, they would be like, well, but he eventually did. And he did come out calmer and he did come out
So
better.
you kind of you push it and you tell him to do it a lot. He doesn't do it, he doesn't do it, and then he does it.
Well, and it's also just like, if there's something like, oh, you weren't very nice to your sister, like there's a consequence for that. No TV before dinner tonight or something. And he kicks off about it. And I say, no, like there's no way that you're getting the TV back. And then he knows the next time it's a real fuck around and find out. Like I wasn't kidding when I said the TV's all done. Like you lost it because you were being a dickhead or whatever.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. It's
We're
all quite,
making
I
it
mean,
up
I'm
as we
not
go
saying that
along.
everything is like peace and love in my house. It's been far from that over the years. It's more about kind of getting rid of the behavior policy, and it's not really about consequences at all. It's about, the way I describe it is, I if your boss was a complete dick, just did something really stupid, and you had to broach that subject with him, her,
Haha.
um, you wouldn't do it in a like, can you go up to your bedroom and have a think about what you just did? You would maybe be like, okay, so what happened there? Because that just seemed kind of like, I was a bit surprised by that. So, and you'd be doing it in a way that's kind of assuming that this was someone you placed yourself under in the hierarchy. You would be quite deferent about it, but you still should say something. And that's how we operate, really. Is, so wow, you were really mean to your sister there. Um, was it worth that? So it seemed like she went to here, and then all of a sudden you went to here, and that kind of, talking it through
Yes.
just worked. Obviously, you can't do it from, right from the beginning. Um,
So
we get there.
when you think about now, because you really know what professionally feels good on your skin, and you're raising these young adults at this point. I mean, they're really little. They're like humans,
One of them's 6'3".
which is crazy to me. I
Yeah,
mean,
the little baby one that you held.
crazy. That little baby is 6'3". What do you think about, like? Do you ever have ideas of like, oh, I think about their professional lives and I want to sort of support them as they go through it, and making sure that they realize that there is a rich professional life out there for them that will still fit within what's going to feel good for them.
I see what you're saying. I find,
Because you had to kiss some frogs to figure out what felt good for you, right?
yeah, yeah. How many jobs have you had where someone is like talking to you like your mum talks to you, where they're like, okay, you missed that project, you can go upstairs and think about it.
Yeah, never.
Like, we don't do that. And it would be, if you had a boss that talked down to you, you probably just, that would be a shit boss, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so life does get easier for everyone, for every PDAer. I mean, there's a lot of things in my life that I have to do as a parent. And it did get to the point where at times it was too much and I just had to spend some time away. But in general, life is much easier in general for a PDA when you're not a kid anymore. And my kids think about what they want to do all the time. And I bet they will be in situations where they'll lock horns with people.
Well, I mean, everybody
But
does.
I want them to know that they don't have to reduce themselves for those people. There are people in their lives who won't be safe. Like the Montessori school teacher who wasn't really quite there with PDA. A person like that is not a bad person. They're trying their best, but they're not safe. They're not safe to be around if you're a PDA. They're not going to do you any good. They're not going to make you, feel safe. And so it's good to be able to recognize people like that and to have those conflicts. I want them to experience life exactly as it is, but know that they can always come back to me and be very safe and loved and trusted. Because in our situation, my love and trust, my not telling them what to do tells them that I trust them to know. And so that's my job. If I were to say, well, you get a job and someone will tell you what to do, it wouldn't be appreciated. It wouldn't work. What I have to think about, what am I trying to achieve here? And if I want my kids to be happy and healthy, then the absolute best thing I can do is just be really clear that I trust them. I know that they are capable people. And they don't need to be like I was, just trying to work the world out and work out how to mold themselves to it.
Kat, you're so fucking cool. You are.
You're cooler.
No, I don't think so. You're so cool. And while I appreciate there's a lot about your story and a lot about what we've talked today that is PDA specific, I do think there are some larger tenets around how to think about and care for your kids and care for yourself and move through the world that anybody can take things away from. And I just really appreciate how open and thoughtful you are. And I'm excited to also put in the show notes information for people, how people can get in touch with you. And you are available for public speaking and all sorts of different opportunities to support people figuring out how to just navigate the professional worlds with authenticity, right?
And I'd love to say as well that there is an amazing woman called Dr. Casey Ehrlich of At Peace Parents. I think it's At Peace Parents or Parenting, but I'll tell you
We'll put in
afterwards.
the show notes.
Yeah. And I came to her like only about 5 years ago when I'd worked it all out through various trial and error and, TV shows. And then she came along and just kind of made the whole narrative make sense. And she really gets PDA, and she also gets PDA parenting. She understands that if your kid's a PDA, it's pretty likely one or both parents will be as well. And so you're in a very kind of trigger situation. And she gets all that, and she does some great videos and resources to help.
Amazing. Okay, well, we'll put her in the show notes. Thank you so much for doing this. I learned so much today, and those are always my favorite, where I really get to learn myself. Before you introduced me to this subset of the autistic community, I had no idea that this was a prescribed specific area, and I'm excited for people to listen to the episode because I have a strong feeling I'm not the only one. So I'm hoping this can open people's eyes and maybe see somebody in their own life in a different light.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. And
I love you, pal.
not be so judgmental. Everyone's going through their stuff.
Everybody's going through their stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kat. You're the best.
You're welcome.
Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at Mutha, MUTHA.life, for a daily look at all things Mutha. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by Mutha Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.